Hello. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. What's up, everybody? This is Human Sexuality 102, Hillmantok University. What's up, Panthers? How we doing? We are talking about the circles of sexuality. If you remember from our syllabus, this is week 1, and week 1 is where we are kind of getting into the foundation of human sexual development. We're getting to the foundation of what that means for a Christian, while scientifically Christians and non-Christians all develop sexually the same. What that process is, what that takeaway is, and all of those things from Christians and non-Christians can be different, because one of the primary impact or factors in your human sexual development is your values. So what we're going to learn about today is going to be a quick lesson, about 30 minutes, for these. So that's what these Monday, Wednesday mini lessons will be like quick little 30-minute lessons. And that, as I said, on Tuesdays beginning next week is when you'll get full lectures in by way of interviews, guest lectures, those type of things. So if you are following along in our books for the class, this model that I'm going to be referencing today, The Circles of Sexuality by Dennis Daly, can be found in our first book, The Naked and Unashamed: Building Confidence as Building Sexual Confidence as a Christian Woman. That's first up on our list. If you do not want to get the whole book, because as I said, all of our books are supplemental. If you don't want to get them, then you can Google Circles of Sexuality. You can Google that to pull up to see what it looks like, so that you can follow along if you are able. And then pull that up so that you can follow along in our discussion for today. Okay. And also, as a reminder, our discussion post for today is what myth have you learned or have you heard about sex that you later learned in life was untrue. For me, for example, I have a brother who used to wear 2 condoms, and he swore by double bagging, as he called it, as an extra way of protection because nobody was going to catch him slipping. Wearing 2 condoms is the fastest way to have a condom break, and then all of the things that you're trying to protect yourself from is now right and ready, and you now have access to. So that is that. So just make sure you put that in the discussion post for today. Welcome everybody who are joining and coming on in. Come on in and take a seat. We will not be before you long. So we're going to jump right on in. So the Circles of Sexuality, as I said, is a model. I'm trying to pull up actually a picture so that I can show you on here what it looks like, so that you can see. But then also, as I said, you can Google it. So, sorry, hold on. Here we go. So this is the Circles of Sexuality model, right? As you see, there is 5 circles with 1 primary circle in the middle. The values, which is sensuality, intimacy, sexual identity, sexual health and reproduction, and sexualization. And that is what we're going to do a quick overview about that today. So when we're talking about human sexual development, understand that Dennis Daly was of the belief, and he theorized that all of us as humans, if you blink and breathe, regardless of your sexual identity, regardless of your upbringing, whatever, we all have come to understand ourselves as sexual beings, or have come to develop into sexual beings because of our journey through these 5 circles. So first and foremost, I'm going to start with the sexual identity, or really the sexual health and reproduction piece, because even if we look at that intersection between, right, bridging the gap between the science and scripture, right, you are in scripture in Genesis when it said, God created a man in his image, male, female created he them. That is where we start with the sexual health and reproduction is one circle and sexual identity is the other one. Biological sex is male, female. Gender is woman, man, trans, non-binary, those type of things. We often get those two languages mixed up, and we see even in our administration, people play fast and loose with the difference between sex and gender. They are not the same. And when God created, but even in male, female, there is also intersex. Intersex is a terminology that has replaced. There used to be a very negative terminology before known as hermaphrodite. Intersex is the language that has replaced that, and that is people who have been born with ambiguous genitalia, people who are born with external genitalia that do not match their genetic makeup. There's people who have external features that do not match their genitalia. There are a number of presentations for intersex folk, and whether you are intersex, male or female identified at birth, all of that falls under your sexual identity. Then there is the gender identity, which is how do you present to the world? How do you identify yourself? Woman, man, all those things. Now, granted, this is a conversation about Christianity where for many people, that isn't a discussion, that isn't an option for believers. But in this course, it's important to understand what the overarching discourse is so that you are able to make a distinction between what you believe and when you are reading your word, trying to figure out is what is happening in society aligned with what scripture says, and then what is my takeaway from them all. Gender expression is originally I said gender identity is how you show up in the world. Gender expression would be how you show up in the world. So if you ever heard the term cisgender, that means what the doctor said you were when you were born. Like, oh, it's how you were identified at birth matches what you think, feel, and believe you are, and aligns with how you show up in the world. So if you were assigned female at birth, you grew up as a girl, you believe yourself to be a woman, you present and live in a way that is stereotypically woman, then you would be cisgender, right? And so that's the gender expression. Gender role, before we get there, and then sexual orientation is who you like and love, right? Who are you attracted to? Who you want to have sex with? Who you want to get married with? Like who you want to get married to. So whether you're romantically involved with, sexually involved with, sexually attracted to, all those things. So when you have heterosexual, same-sex attracted, or homosexual, demisexual, all of those things fall under orientation. And whereas which is altogether different, from gender identity and gender expression. So when we think of that LGBTQ plus spectrum, all of that falls under the sexual identity. And again, it is important to note because language matters. Words mean things, right? And so for people in the world who live, them being trans doesn't necessarily have any bearing on who they are attracted to. Them being, non-binary doesn't necessarily have any bearings on the clothes that they buy, right? A lot of folks believe that they get the freedom to make, think, and show up with whoever, however, whenever, they want. So that's the sexual identity piece. Essentially is how we perceive ourselves as sexual beings and how we present that perception to the world and to others. Sexual health and reproduction is the science of the matter. That is actual sex. That's anatomy and physiology. Our first course, our first lesson, we went over that pop quiz with the different parts of the vulva, learning the difference between vulva and vagina, understanding the difference or the location of the clitoris. That's anatomy and physiology. The sexual and reproductive system, we learned about that. Sexually transmitted infections, contraception, abortion, all of those things fall under the sexual health and reproduction circle. So if you are coming to understand who you are, your identity, and you are writing your sexual story, if you will, you would be writing your experiences with all of those things. Okay, let's switch now. Now we have sensuality and intimacy, right? Intimacy is, and sensuality as well, is one of those words that Hollywood has taken hold of and held on to it. Hollywood has convinced us that intimate and has reduced intimacy to rose petals, slow music, candlelight, whining and dining, sweeping grand gestures of performative emotionality. That is what Hollywood has convinced us that intimacy is. And when we believe that and we hold strong, like, in this, I'm sure you've either said or heard it say, if it don't feel like 90s R&B, I don't want it. And we have these very prescriptive ideas of what intimate is. And very rarely does it connect to its main core source, which is vulnerability. We don't like that. We all like that kind of church. Y'all don't like to be vulnerable. And so that is what intimacy is. Any space where shared vulnerability is required. One of my favorite sexologist Shamira says, intimacy is being seen, heard, valued, and understood. And I like to say that intimacy is the freedom to be completely naked, even when you're fully clothed. And that is important to note in all areas of our life, not just romantically, right? A great deal of us are saved in here, so that means spiritually, you want to be able to be seen, heard, valued, and understood, not just by the Lord, but by the people you fellowship and worship with. Yes, you want to be able to be seen, heard, valued, and understood by your pastor or whoever is discipling you. You want to be able to be completely naked while being fully clothed when somebody is praying for you. Like, you want to be able to, if you're going through some type of spiritual counseling or whatever, you want to be able to bear it all and trust that it'll be safe here, right? When in your finances, you want that to be a safe space. With your recreational intimacy, like your hobbies, like if you're a stamp collector or you like Comic-Con, you want to be in a place and community with people that you can say you like to dress up like a furry bunny and go to expensive conferences. You don't want to be judged for that, right? And the same way with physical intimacy, right? We have grown to a place in our world where we're getting further and further away from physical intimacy, and we are by conflating physical intimacy with sexual intimacy. We think that any type of touch, particularly in cisgender heterosexual relationships, any type of intergender touch has to be sexually motivated, which is untrue. We were born, and which falls under this the sensuality circle, we were born with an innate need to be touched. It's called skin hunger, skin or touch hunger, right? We were born to be touched. Like, we thrive in touch. Babies who are preemie, their prognosis improves when they do skin to skin. Like those in the NICU and incubators, they do better when they can be touched. They put twins together so that they can because we feel better, we thrive in that type of environment where we can be touched, right? When COVID happened, a lot of us suffered and struggled in our mental health because of social distancing, because we were not able to connect with one another. I know a lot of people like to say, like this physical touch is their love language and things like that, but a lot of times they equate that to sex. People whose love language is physical touch, if they only experience touch for sexual purposes, they actually feel deprived. because touch is given in safety. I mean, if touch is a sign of safety, it also can be a sign of danger. And so when we have this conversation about sexuality, sexual development, pleasure, we cannot have this conversation apart from the vital necessity, which is healthy consensual touch, right? And so that physical intimacy then is about proximity more than it is about sexual expression. Can I fit next to you? Can I hug you? Are you comfortable when we hold hands? All over social media, you see the running jokes of like, girls who want to be inside of their boyfriend's skin and they're crawling inside of their, shirts. Like one of my favorite creators, a couple creator, she's always like crawling inside of like his shirt or his clothes or on his lap and things like that while he's working and all of that. They show, or at least display for the public, a healthy amount of physical intimacy. Like how safe are you with people, as we call it, in your personal space? And so people who do not like people in their personal space, that is learned behavior. Your refusal to, I don't like being hugged, I don't like being touched, don't hold my hand, that's learned behavior. Somebody or some experience told you that it was safer to keep people away. You weren't born like that. This is just how I am. No, it's not. It's how you became. It's how you became, right? And so intimacy then is being able to lay that down and trust that you are safe in this space with this individual person or group or whatever. For example, I did not grow up in a very affectionate home. When I would want to come in my mom's room, hug her, lay on her lap, so that she would push me away. She struggled with anxiety and her own, traumas and things like that. So she wasn't very touchy-feely. And I know how that rejection felt as a kid. So I made it important. I made it important for me to know that I would not do that to my children. So I keep my bedroom door open unless I'm getting dressed. Things like that, so that they feel like a free flow in and out, right? But my oldest son, he takes up so much space. He wants to hang all over me. He is one that will live in my skin if he wants. When we're sitting next to each other, he wants me to rub his head. He wants me to hold his hand. He wants me to do all the things. And that is not a normal thing for me because I did not grow up seeing platonic or familial affection. Now I seen romantic affection. So in my head, affection and rubbing, touchy, huggy, feely was reserved for your man. And so this big 5'9" at this point, 14-year-old, you ain't my man, stop touching me. And then also as a mother, I breastfed him for 13 months. And moms, we can feel touched out sometimes. Like every time somebody touches me, it's to consume me. You want something from me. So I need my space. And I felt myself getting distant and kind of pushing him away in the same way that my mom did. And I did not want that for him. So I had to begin to express to him what healthy boundaries look like. I had to give him moments where I walked up to him and would give him hugs and give him kisses and things like that. So he still felt that love and warmth, but in a way that did not cross a boundary for me. That intimacy is learning that you can have boundaries even with your children. Sometimes, particularly moms, are just taught that there is no such thing as boundaries with your children. You're not allowed to tell your kids no. You're not, every time they want a hug, you have to give it, which is untrue. But you know what took me to learn that lesson was the fact that he was always gimme, 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 gimme. But my baby boy, I have to go find him under a rock. He is very much don't touch me, but don't go nowhere. Like he want me in the area, but not all up in his space. And I found myself more willing to be affectionate and hugging and all of that with him because I didn't feel like he was taking something from me. It was a freedom to be able to offer it. And so it also set a tone for a good lesson with my oldest on consent, because he also is touchy-feely with everybody. And his friends didn't really like it. His friends was pretty uncomfortable with it. And I had to tell you have to ask people before you just run up and sit on their lap, before you jump in their arm, before you hugging all over and kissing all over them. And sometimes we can sit with each other and just be close without touching, right? Intimacy and intimacy negotiations look just like that and sound like that. But I'm talking to my child. I wasn't talking to a partner. So you can be able to have that mindset to, how do I navigate these intimacy conversations with the people in my life? Because intimacy, what falls in that: caring and sharing, loving and liking, risk taking, vulnerability, self-disclosure, trust, and above all else, reciprocity. It is dangerous to practice one size fits all vulnerability, because everything is not for everybody. That doesn't mean you have to keep secrets, but you want to use wisdom in who you are being intimate with, right? Many of us in our culture have grown up in the what goes on in this house stays in this house type of mindset, right? We've learned that. And so that has taught us that we got to keep things close to the chest. And some of us, because we grew up that way, now we're open book. We keep no secrets because we know how dangerous secrets can be. That was an overcorrection, right? You have to, how many people have ever said that they're an oversharer? Big time oversharer. Because I never want to be bound by secrets. I know how the enemy can run rampant in secrets and secrecy and darkness and shame and all of those things. And I didn't want no parts of it. But as I matured, I had to learn that true intimacy doesn't look like word vomiting and vulnerability dumping all over people and then forcing them to prove whether they can be trusted with everything that I just shared. It means using wisdom and vetting people up front and sharing information and experiences as is appropriate with the level and trajectory of the relationship. And so that is why I say Hollywood has done us a disservice, because if all we're focusing on is the rose petals and the candles, we're not really getting into the meat of the thing that is necessary for healthy relationships, platonic, familial, spiritual, or romantic, right? And then the next circle is sensuality. As I said, that's where skin hunger is. That's where our visual and auditory stimuli is. That is where our sexual response cycle lies. That's where body image is and where fantasies are under sensuality. Sensuality is another one of those buzzwords that we immediately think eroticism, but it's not necessarily true. Sensuality is experiences of engaging your senses. And the beauty of it for a Christian is that if you are a Christian, you believe in the traditional Hebrew Bible that fornication or sex should be reserved for marriage, then the thought of how do I experience intimate sensual experiences while I'm single is to rest in the idea that sexual experiences and sexual eroticism is only one aspect of your senses, right? All of the other senses that we have are used to take in non-sexual sources of pleasure, which can also be sensual. So when you curate your space to see things that are beautiful and it makes you feel good, that's sensual. When you buy, certain sheets, a certain quality of sheets, or a memory foam mattress so that it's easy to taking pressure off your back, that's sensual. The way you choose the temperature you choose for your shower or your pedicure bowl and all those things, sensual. How the time and care that you put into when you take your everything shower and when you're exfoliating and you got, a good, spending a couple dollars on some good body cream and all that, and you're really taking your time rubbing it in and all of those things, sensual, right? And those are experiences that you can experience on your own and don't have to be sexually motivated. Now, we ain't gonna pretend like a good bath and a good, good cream don't make you hot and bothered sometimes. And for my single saved and saving it students in the class, I am you and you is me. I understand. However, even for those who are a part of the course that don't share that value, there's also a part of experiences where you are growing, and where sensuality is your level of awareness, acceptance, and enjoyment of your own and others' bodies. And I would also expand that to say of your own and others' world views, right? Your environment, your space, the way the home smells, the fabric of the clothes, all of those things create sensual experiences. And when you get to a place where you are comfortable and sensual experiences and intimate experiences, particularly for single people, become a commonplace, you don't feel so desperate for it in a relational space. And then when you're in a relational space, it becomes a staple, right? You establish this as a norm where you don't feel like you're chasing it elsewhere, right? You come in, I create these environments for myself. So when I'm looking for a partner who says, oh, I'm not really romantic, I don't get into the flower thing, Valentine's Day is a man-made holiday and all of that, you're not really kind of trying to fight in this like, will I, won't I, like, is this something I'm willing to compromise on? Because you recognize that you do it for yourself. And you can choose to welcome them into your space and they can, get on board. Or you can be like, nah, I need somebody that's going to come already fully potentied. Like, I don't need no potential. Come fully potentied, right? So that is sensuality. We already talked about skin hunger, the visual and the stimuli thing. So your sexual response cycle, that is how your body processes through from desire to arousal to climax. And for a while, when it was first introduced and first studied, that was the thought. Desire, arousal, plateau, climax, resolve. We went straight like that, right? But we realized that not all bodies work like that. Some people take a long time to transition from desire to arousal. Some people's plateau is a little bit longer. Some people's plateau doesn't come till after a climax or several climaxes if you are one of God's favorites, right? And so that is just the idea of how my body responds to what's happening to me. It is stereotypically is thought that women need their mind stimulated before they can process through their sexual response cycle. And for some, that is true. For some, don't worry about my mind. Bend me over, girl. Bend me over so I can show you what I'm working with. Okay? I don't care if we arguing. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. That's for some people, right? And we get into these stereotypes about women and men as it relates to sex, especially one of the most damaging ones is that men need sex. And so when we teach that men need sex and women have sex, we do not spend enough time, women, learning our bodies to understand what is it that I really need to get me to that pinnacle. And then men are just expected to just know, right? We're just assume that they've been in it so long that they just know what to do, especially, and I see that a lot of times in my coaching practice with Christian couples, that the man, especially if they've had sexual experiences before, they're already presumed to be good at it. But here's the thing, just because you have more experience in a thing does not mean you're more skilled in said thing, particularly if you have not put the energy into getting good at that thing. And so when we tell men that they need sex, then they don't have to get good at it because they're going to get it any way, shape, or form. They're always going to have it available, which is why the orgasm gap exists, which also falls under this circle. The orgasm gap says that men who have sex with women 90-something% of the time will climax. They can all but take it to the bank that if they're getting ready to have sex with the woman, they're going to climax. Women who have sex with men, who desire men, only climax about 65 to 68% of the time. That's a D average. I don't want no D's. I don't want no D level gratitude. We talk about how to initiate conversation around arousal. Yes. Not necessarily today, maybe, but depending on how much time we get through this. But one of the lessons that we will have is on erotic communication. And so yes, Crystal, yes. I ain't got my glasses on, y'all, so y'all got to forgive me. But so that's what that's damaging to think that, right? And so then I see couples come into my in my practice or my coaching program, and the husband is upset because the wife isn't, flying off the chandelier. The wife isn't flying off the chandelier because she's processed through all of these circles, and then all of those circles are filtered through very strict conservative Christian values that says, I should ignore this part of my life until I get married. Right? And then now on my wedding night, I'm supposed to bust it wide. And I'm actually quite scared. I actually feel like this is not becoming of a good woman of God. And men, in my experience, don't want to generalize, have been taught to believe, because they need sex, that, and there's always be ready, willing, and available to them, that they really want. Ooh, child, what? Did y'all hear that? I don't know what my neighbor got going on down there. No, it's, so we did the orientation at 8:30. But it was going to be Monday and Wednesday at it was supposed to be at noon, but I had something going on. But Monday and Wednesday at noon, and then the Tuesday guest lectures come on YouTube at 10 a.m. But this replay, hopefully I'll be able to get this replay on YouTube afterwards. But we go live Mondays and Wednesdays at 12 o'clock. That way we did the 8:30 just for that one class. But it's important for everybody, men and women alike, to understand the uniqueness of desire and sexual arousal, right? With outside of the stereotypes, because there are men who run from sex. Ask me how I know. I was married for 10 years and I had sex 165 times in 10 years. My ex-husband and I were not wonderful father, wonderful man. We weren't on the same page because that wasn't something that he needed. But I bought into the thought that men needed sex. I bought into the thought that because he was older than me, that I bet not come in there playing no games. I bet not come in there acting like I got a headache and ain't want to do nothing and all of those things. Like I bet not act, I bet not act up. But he was like, what else you got? Are you going to cook? Are you going to clean? And I was a 22 hot young tender. Cook, clean. I got to go to school. My grandma said she'd come do it. But no, he wanted someone very domesticated. And that just wasn't me. But I bought into the stereotype that as long as I was wet and willing, I didn't want to have to battle. And quickly learned that that was not the truth. And so to know, Grace, I didn't technically count, but we averaged about once or twice in between each menstrual cycle. So then I just did the math in the back end when we were going through our counseling during our separation. So roundabouts on average. So yeah, the other piece of the sexual response cycle that is a discrepancy oftentimes is this spontaneous versus responsive desire. That's another thing that we don't talk about and don't give credence to. Some people are, just because it's Tuesday, so you smell good, I like them jeans, what's up? We can get busy. And if I'm not already there, give me a couple give me a couple kisses and we in business. We active, right? But then responsive desire is, this is not on my mind, right? I'm not thinking about this. But, and again, in response to certain stimuli, now I can get on board and then my mind is in it. Okay, I want to do this, but then I need a couple more minutes for my body to catch up, right? And for most women, biologically, we are about 15 to even 30 some minutes behind men in that desire to arousal, especially to peak arousal type of cycle. And which is why foreplay is so important. And so when we have men or partners who say, man, it takes too much, it shouldn't take all of that and that kind of thing, it's really disheartening, because if you are a man who has sex with a woman, your partner's body is literally designed for foreplay to be a necessity for peak arousal. And when we're talking about peak lubrication, as well as for women, when you are aroused, your vaginal canal lengthens, right? And so and here's why, and I'll throw this in there just for free. Here is why size matters. Size doesn't matter because if it's bigger, it'll be better, because there's some big ones who have no idea what they're doing with it. There are some little ones who I've been told will have you screaming in cursive, right? But if you are, let's see, not 9, 10, 11 inches, which is 4 or 5 inches higher than the American average of a fully erect penis, right? Fully erect penis in America on average is about 5.2 or so inches, fully erect, fully ready to go. So if you're in the well above average in the 9, 10, 11, and you are just ready to stick it right on in to a woman whose vaginal canal is shorter or not fully aroused, and you got 9 inches and she sits between like 3 inches, what are we going to do? How is that going to work? But if you take your time and spend time with the arousing, with the foreplay, warming it up, and then we get a little bit more elongated, now we have a little bit more space for it to go, and it's a little bit more enjoyable, right? But the reason why we don't think like that is because we're taught sex is supposed to hurt. And your worth for women, for many, is in the quality of how good you can take it. And it's all like, why you running? We don't. Now, sometimes we run because we're overwhelmed with the sensation, but also sometimes it's run because I can't, it hurts. And sex isn't supposed to hurt. And we use a lot of violent language. And this is not judging. I'm not kink shaming. Y'all do what y'all want to do. Get into what you get into. But when we think about how the violent language that we apply to sex sometimes, like beating it up and, although leave you walking funny and all those type of things. Like, I don't want to have to like physically recuperate from sex. Now that I'm so wore out emotionally, I can't get myself together. I'm in the stars and I'm in, a subspace where I'm just, what the heck? And now I want to make you breakfast and all of that. Cool. Let's do that. But if I am physically hurt afterwards, we don't have to do that, which is why when I did that bonus lesson on how sex having to hurt the first time, having to like required to hurt the first time is a myth, is that we don't spend enough time in foreplay. And if you think about it, a lot of us had sex, for the ones who had sex early or who had sex with inexperienced partners, there wasn't a lot of foreplay. So naturally you weren't fully aroused, weren't fully lubricated. So it would make sense that would hurt, right? So if we took the time to really warm up the oven, okay, it wouldn't necessarily hurt as bad. Sexologist Myra talks about like, you wouldn't put a frozen pizza in a cold oven. You have to preheat it first. And we should do the same things with our bodies. Body image is another crucial piece of how we see ourselves as sexual beings. And in this course, when we talk about Christ, Clits, and culture, specifically Black culture, the body image, the collective body image of Black women, the promoted body image of Black women has done, and the stereotypes associated with us, like the Jezebel stereotype, the Mamie, the angry Black woman, Sapphire, the angry Black woman stereotype. All of that plays itself up into how we see ourselves sexually, because all of those stereotypes find itself in our books, finds itself in our music, finds itself in our TV, in our commercials, in all of the media we consume on social media. All of those things, we're in consistent like comparison mode. Right. One of the other books that is on the list for this course is Dr. Donna Oriowo's Cocoa Butter and Hair Grease. And it's looking at sexual confidence and body image through the lens of colorism and texturism. And like the thought process of, can I put on lingerie with a TWA? Like what, like, and you, like, if we live in a world where we literally had to have a law passed for us to wear our hair out of our heads, the way it came out of our scalp, into the office. Like, I had to have a law to make it legal for my hair to do what it's supposed to do so that I can go to what it always do, what it was born to do, no work of my own, so that I can go to work. Right? So naturally, and we have those things like the good hair, first, all the discourse we have on social media with what hair counts as 4C and all those kind of things impact how we see ourselves, impact what we consider beautiful, impact what we consider sexy. Right? And so that when we are experiencing and navigating our bodies and other people's bodies, what you view about your body also plays a role in how free you are to be vulnerable, how relaxed you are during sexual intercourse, and how likely you are to orgasm. When you are, it's an experience called spectatoring, where you are in a sexual experience, but you're kind of like out of body experience, like over yourself, kind of looking down, commentating on everything that's going on. Like, am my breast hanging too low? Is my hair, is my scarf going to fall off? How do I smell? How does it taste? Am I clapping it good enough? Is it, oh my God, am I making too much noise? Am I like being Joan from Girlfriends? Am I an ouch, ouch girl? All of those like kind of comparisons and all of those kind of like questions takes you out of the space. And the mindfulness that is necessary to fully experience an orgasm is really impacted greatly by our body image, right? Like, I know moms, like postpartum moms, when, you know, things shift and move, and after having breastfed, the breasts don't sit the way they want to do. So when you're on top, you can't really focus on, you know, how you got to really get at it, because if you're worrying about do my tits hang low, do they wobble to it flow, like, you know what I'm saying? And so now the hardest way to orgasm is to first try to orgasm. Like, if you're trying to orgasm, you're going to not orgasm, because orgasm is not something that you do or achieve. It's an experience. And if you are focused on the pleasure that's happening, then you're more likely to orgasm. When you stop worrying about orgasms, you're more likely to orgasm. So women who feel like they've never experienced orgasm, my first question is, do you get sufficient clitoral stimulation? Right? We learned about the clitoris on Monday, and we know that 70% of women not just like, but require clitoral stimulation to achieve a orgasm, right? Next to clitoral stimulation, my next question is, where is your mind when you're having sex? And almost always it's somewhere else. It's somewhere else. Even if it's in the room, it's on him. Does he like it? Am I doing it right? So much pressure, right? Pressure isn't sexy. Pressure is not going to get you to the orgasm, right? And that's why all of these things are important. And then the last but not least, the last circle is sexualization. Because as we navigate all of these parts of our lives, the sensuality, the intimacy, the sexual identity, the sexual health and reproduction, we just got flagged for sexually suggestive behavior and language. So I don't know if they're listening to the words or somebody reported it, but I don't want to get no more flags. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up real quick. Sexualization is, as we navigate through all of these things, understanding that there is a dark side of sex that many of us, particularly in the culture, particularly Black women, last stats I saw, 1 in 4 Black women would have experienced some sort of sexual coercion before their 18th birthday. 60% of the human and sex trafficking rings are made up of Black women and women or young girls of color. And so too many of us have experienced unwanted messages, images, seduction, sexual harassment, insult, sexual assault, rape, all of those things. And ways in which we show up in the world where our society promotes this kind of pay for play exchange of sexuality in exchange for goods and services. It's almost like this like relational prostitution that we've gotten ourselves in, because the world has showed us, as the world is becoming increasingly more sexualized, that's what it takes to get what you want, right? That's what they said on Players Club. You got to use what you got to get what you want. But when you have had those negative experiences, it's difficult to see the gift of sex as a gift, to see it as something that you get to do versus something that you have to do, to see it as something that you and for women, that there's a ownership that you should have and take and to end this. And my hope for, again, professionally or personally, is that we begin to have the language and the know-how to establish a I can do something like that. I guess it's all about the cheat sheet for the print off for the actual word. You gotta give me some time, because it's difficult. And this is why I said in the orientation that doing this work and showing up for y'all in this way is very difficult, because the algorithm and all the things do not make it easy. Like, we're having this is health class basically. I ain't telling nobody to do nothing, tell nobody to put it nowhere. But then there's people having living, breathing intercourse on the internet, and that's just fine. Like, and that's what we struggle against. But for those who have experienced these negative experiences, the first thing that you need to do, or first thing that I would encourage a client to do, is be able to distinguish what happened to you from what this is, right? That wasn't sex. If it wasn't consensual, it wasn't sex, right? If it wasn't consensual, it's not even flirting. It's harassment. Like, if you are flirting with me all in my face, making all these suggestive notes and winks and blinks and all that, and I make it clear to you that that's not something that I'm interested in, and I continue to do it, now you're not flirting anymore. It's harassment. And we don't like to call things things. And that's the unfortunate part about it, is that we don't like to call things things. I seen somebody post a while ago about non-consensual sex. There's no such thing as non-consensual sex. There's sex and there's assault. Sex is inherently consensual. Right? Yes, and shout out to, and hearts and loves to anybody who's experienced those things. This work that I do, not only do I feel like it's a calling, but everything that I talk about, everything that I teach about, I have experienced in some way, shape, or form directly. And I understand the work it takes to see this as positive, and where we start is with healthy conversations, or as I like to call, daring discussions about it, which is what my podcast is called. It's called Daring Discussions, bridging the gap between the science and scripture of human sexuality, and we keep it real, raw, and righteous. Cheap plug, season 2 comes back next Tuesday at 10 o'clock. It's called Sex And, where we'll be looking at, and this will be your supplement. This is why I talk about the supplemental lectures. It will be Sex And in every episode is a different intersection where sex plays a role. First up for the premiere is Sex and Money, and how when you have money problems, you very often have bedroom problems. So that's where we'll start. All of season 1 is available on YouTube, and those will be service sort of like that supplemental. Those supplemental lessons. For next, as we get ready to wrap up, for those who aren't sure, the book list is available on my post in the playlist for this class. The syllabus is also available there. We will be, the next week, our topic 2 is the spectrum of Christian sexual ethics. For those who don't know, I'm all but dissertate. I'm writing my dissertation. My research topic is the sexual scripts. I'm gonna go over the schedule again in 1 second. I'm researching the sexual scripts of Black Pentecostal millennials, and how those scripts align with scripture or not. That's what I'm studying. And so for my research, I developed a spectrum of sexual behavior from universally accepted to immoral. So we will discuss those things on the spectrum, whether what's debated, those things, and then we'll do a little walkthrough. That will be a little bit more heavily on scripture, walking through where we see those at and where I got what led me to place it on this part of the spectrum. So that's next week, and we'll break it down both Monday and Wednesday, excuse me. So we'll have these live lessons here happen on Monday and Wednesday at 12 o'clock, our noontime chat and chew. I was a little late getting on today because I had therapy, but Now I'm scheduling my therapy around this. This one was already scheduled. So Mondays and Wednesdays, 12 o'clock, chat and chew, right? Tuesdays is when the podcast episode comes out. So that will be on YouTube at 10 o'clock. And those will be your guest lectures, if you will, where I will be interviewing other people who are having conversations that intersect with sexuality. And yes, these are Eastern Standard. These are Eastern Standard times. So Monday, Wednesday, 12 p.m. here. Tuesday, the episodes drop, or the lectures will drop 10 a.m. on YouTube. Now, this particular lecture, I'm doing on my phone, so I'm not sure if they will let me save it from my phone like they do from the desktop version. But hopefully, if you can't watch it, or if you can stay, or if you want to replay it, yes, that's correct. Excuse me. Hopefully I can get it and put it on YouTube. So, are there any questions before we close? Excuse me. Jesus. Any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions? Yes, we have a syllabus. The syllabus and the book list are on my page. They're also in the playlist for this course. on my page is the book list, and the syllabus is there with what we're going to talk about on each week. And I will work on like I said, like a terminology or something that we can follow along with, so that we don't get banned. I can't believe I got violated, y'all. Anyway, all right. Thank you so much. If all hearts and minds are clear, we will wrap it up, and I will see y'all on Monday. Bye.